You stupid bitch. Yeah, you're a stupid bitch. You stupid bitch. Welcome to a new episode of Stupid Bitches Say What? With your hosts, Skye Collett and Sean Bino. Me. This week's theme is historical events.
I'll be reminiscing about my youthful days and relating this week's themes to my experience at the old Sydney Town theme park during the 80s. And Sean will be talking about the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. Stay tuned. What are you drinking, Sean?
Wow, I'm drinking something as per usual. This week I'm drinking a bottle of Hearts and Bones Cabernet Sauvignon.
Red again, red again.
It is red. I've gone back to my roots. It's a Margaret River, and I've also gone a little Francois with a 2017 vintage.
Ooh, so a 4-year. Not quite the 5 that you had the other time, because that was a 2016, wasn't it?
That was a special occasion. Yes, that was a 2016, and not quite the 2021 vintage that I had last week.
So is it naked? Is it a Naked Wines again?
I think it is. It's hard to tell with all these subscriptions, but I think it is a Naked Wines.
So how many bottles of wines do you have on your rack at the moment with the 2 cases that you got?
It's full. The rack is full, and we're due another 6-pack soon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I've got a lot of wine. Tyler just asked if I needed anything at the pub, and I was like, no,
I'm okay. So we've got 24 in the rack, and then because there's an overflow, there's 8 sitting underneath the buffet.
Nice. That's how you want to live your life, though, isn't it? Have
Totally.
Influx of wines.
Most of the things with wine racks too is that they're just full for visual effects. But I'd like to say 8 of those bottles, if not 9, in the rack are Vinny's Rosé. He's been stocking up and not really drinking them.
So which is the rosé that he drinks?
He drinks a variety of rosés. It just has to be a pale pink. He doesn't like it to be too dark. He likes it to be a pale pink because otherwise it's too fruity. But he likes it to be also dry and crisp.
Dry and crisp.
Yeah.
And so cold. He likes it very cold.
Oh, it has to be. As he says, it needs to be marinating in the fridge. So he has a bottle of Bird in the Hand rosé in the fridge that he's been looking at desperately for the last couple of days.
See, whereas I'll drink lukewarm wine once I've had a few and it doesn't even faze me. It needs to be cold for that first crisp glass, but after that, meh.
Yeah, I can get that with white wine too, yeah. The first ones have to be very chilled, and then after that it's like, just fill her up.
Yeah. Just get it into me.
Yeah. What are you drinking, Skye?
Okay, so I am drinking, talking about the old rosé, I'm drinking, you're going to love this. This is a Naked Wine. I'm drinking the Dream Bird Ranger, spelled Ranga, Ranger,
right.
rosé.
Is it orange flavoured? Or?
No, look, it's perfectly pink. Look, it does look actually a little bit orange there, but it's perfectly pink. It's quite a light pink. It's a 2021.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's this year's vintage.
Fresh out the barrel, fresh out the wine womb.
But it's a Ranger, baby. It's a little Ranger. So I actually had a bottle and a half. That's why there's not much left of it. A bottle and a half earlier this week. Polished it off. But I made sure I kept a little bit so I could use it for tonight's episode because I thought you would appreciate the fact that it was a Ranger rosé.
I do appreciate that. And so being a Ranger wine, I'm guessing it's got no soul.
You would expect that, yes.
Yeah.
It would have no soul, of course.
It's not
as
quite
rumor
has it.
Yeah, as rumor has it. Well, look, I'm marrying a Ranger, so
Oh, is he a Ranger?
Yes, he is. He's a little strawberry blonde, leaning a little bit closer to the side of red, but yes, he definitely puts up with a lot of Ranger jokes from our friends.
Well, strawberry blonde, I think, is a much more subtle rang.
More acceptable level of Ranger.
They're allowed.
Much more tolerable.
Yeah.
So how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. It's been pretty busy, as per usual. What has been good is getting some feedback on our previous episode on pop culture and some people who have reigniting their viewing of Sex and the City, and also those who hadn't seen Grey Gardens and now trying to find out where they can watch it. getting a few comments on that too, which is great. So it's nice to see where we're being influential.
Of course we are. That does not surprise me at all. So you were right about it being on YouTube, though, because I watched the documentary. I haven't gotten to the movie just yet. I'm hanging to watch the movie, but I just need a little bit of time to do it. But I watched the full documentary, and then I watched the I can't think of what the program was called, but it came up as a recommendation after I watched the documentary, which showed the Grey Gardens house now, or in the last couple of years, being restored. So it was like a television program where they interviewed the new owner who purchased it from Little Edie, and she talked about meeting Little Edie. It goes for about 5 minutes.
Okay, I didn't know that existed. I have to watch that.
Yeah.
And it is still the same house, isn't it? They've just revamped it, made it nice.
And they restored a lot of the furniture. So any of the furniture that was salvageable, they restored it and kept it. So she made a commitment to Little Edie that she would do that. Whether or not she's, full of shit or not, I don't quite know. But it would have cost a fucking fortune.
It would have been.
To restore it,
But that's what they said. Like, they had that agreement when she was selling it. She wasn't going to sell it to anybody. She had to have that stipulated that they weren't going to tear it down. So she probably did. She probably did fulfill that. And did you say that they met? She was talking about when she bought it off Little Edie.
Yes, and she describes walking into the house and it being a complete shambles, and the cats and the raccoons and everything, and Little Edie sort of prancing around, and yeah.
I love that. I started Sex in the City.
Oh yes.
This week as part of our homework, and look, I have to say, while there are while some of the topics don't translate well in today's time, or some of the conversations, I guess, I'm actually really enjoying it too. And it's a really good bedtime viewing series. They're really short episodes as well. You can smash out 3. And now I look forward to the dun 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 dun.
So who's your favourite character so far? Do you have a fave?
Look, it's really early in the series, but out of the girls, I do like Samantha.
Yeah, I told you. And she just gets better and better and better.
I'm really enjoying her. Carrie's good. I'm liking them all. Like you said, it's there's none I hate. So like Seinfeld, where I didn't like George, but I liked everyone else.
I hated George too. I couldn't stand him. And the character development occurs in the next season as well, where they start to become, a more deeper, complex character, and that's when you really start to relate to them a little bit more, I think.
You know who kind of annoys me is Skipper.
Oh yeah. Forgot about old Skipper. Yeah, he's a weirdo.
It's Skipper. It was like they tried to make the Pretty in Pink, where there's Ducky or whatever, or Bucky or whatever his name is. There's always that sort of nerdy friend who liked the popular girl and never got there in the end. It was kind of like familiar to that type of character.
Yeah, right. Well, he stays in it for a little bit. Like, he comes in and out probably, I think, a little bit in season 2, but I think that's it after that. So you see him a few more times. Yeah, he was a weirdo for sure.
Yeah. I hate his hair.
Yeah, totally. Some of the styles, though, some of the fashion choices are like, are you fucking kidding me? Miranda's outfits. Huh?
That is kind of the favourite part for me. Oh, yes, I've just seen Miranda pretending to be a lesbian, which is life imitating art, imitating life, or whatever.
Well, she wasn't a lesbian then, because she married a man and had a baby with him, and then they divorced, and then she came out and was a lesbian.
Yeah. But that is also what I've been loving with Sex and the City too, is like the fucking computers, man. And they're high tech for that day, because they would have had the best shit. The monitor's as big as a fucking iPad. The screen is about an iPad, yeah. And the box behind the monitor is fucking huge. Yeah, so I'm loving that stuff. And I was thinking too, it'd be interesting to see how they would have done it with in today's times, because it would have been full of iPhones and selfies and all that shit. It would have had a completely different spin on it if it was set in today's day.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But yeah, no, I've loved it.
My sister messaged me today because she's only just gotten around to listening to the Port Arthur and the Morehouse murders today, and she said to me, she was riveted, by the way, by the Port Arthur stuff, and she said that when she was in legal studies in grade 9, she remembers a teacher coming in to tell her legal studies teacher that her brother was in Port Arthur at the time.
Holy
and
shit.
he ended up being one of the victims.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he's one of the guys who was killed in the cafe.
In the cafe.
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
So
That's
I don't know
funny.
any more of that. I don't know who it was or anything like that. But she
Yeah.
said, I vividly remember it. I was like, I don't remember that.
Well,
Because
that's
I would have been
funny.
year 11 then. But she remembers it happening in class.
It's funny you say that because we were watching the video with Maria and Belinda last Saturday because we were drunk and watched the recording. And Maria was telling us that her auntie was at Port Arthur that morning and had breakfast in the cafe that morning and saw Martin Bryant walking in there, but they'd left before the massacre. Crazy. It's a small world. And it's also been a big week for our podcast. We're nearing 100 views on our listens, which is exciting for us.
It is exciting. It is very exciting. We check it about 10 times a day each and then message each other frantically every time there's one extra listen.
It's now 90. It's now 12.
And we love watching the countries pop up where people are listening it in.
That's another big statement.
Where we don't know
fucking
people.
Global. We've gone global.
Yeah.
We have listeners in America. We have listeners in Singapore. We have listeners in Ireland, and we have listeners in Germany.
Yes.
For fuck's sake.
I know.
Which is great, yeah.
It is. It's awesome.
So if you're listening in any of those countries, thanks for following us, and make sure to join our social pages and interact.
Welcome to Stupid Bitches Say What. We love having you.
We do love having you. So, should we get into the our chatties?
Yes.
Our chatty.
So you're going first. You're doing the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. I must say, when I saw this topic, I was like, really? I did a little bit of a snore.
Interesting.
But I'm interested to see what you're gonna do with it.
Well, the thing is, when we have historical events as our topic, I didn't want to just do Roman times or fucking, what your typical history would be. I thought I'd do some important things that happened. And I do remember when the wall came down. And do you remember when we were talking about that in our true crime episode? Do you remember where you were for Port Arthur, or do you remember where we were for Princess Di? Now, it was the 9th of November in 1989, so I think you're about 9. So you'd be forgiven.
I don't recall
if
that.
You don't recall.
No.
I was 12 and I was in grade 7 at primary school. And that year they'd introduced in our grade that half the class would do German as a language and half would do Japanese. And I was in the German class. So I'd done German all year, quite enjoyed it. We had a German teacher that would come and teach us, obviously. And I remember when the Berlin Wall came down, how emotional and how much it hit her because she was German and how relevant it was for her. So I definitely remember where I was the day that it happened and how significant it was. Now, I'm not sure if you do know about how the Berlin Wall came down, but it's an interesting story and sequence of events into how it happened.
I actually know fuck all, to be honest.
Good.
I know there was a wall and it came down and that was it. And So,
entertaining. Of course, I'll get to all the points. I like a little structure. What the fuck is going on with this microphone? Oh, and apologies last week. We know that there was some crackling and interference.
Yes.
With the recording. We've realised that mobile phones under a computer with a microphone and headphones, a good podcast does not make.
I think I already knew that. I think the whole working from home journey has taught me that, electrical interference can cause heaps of stuff-ups when you've got heaps of things logged in. But, Ben obviously didn't.
I did not. It hasn't happened to me for ages. Do you remember when you'd have your phone near your TV and someone would send a message and a message was coming through because you'd hear that. That's what it was like. So apologies for that. The mobile phone is behind me.
I'm glad you said something because I was actually going to say we should probably mention that so people know. But guys, it is only for a couple of minutes because we realized it happened and we actually re-recorded a little piece of it, but we missed a chunk that it was still happening for. So bear with it. It's a good episode.
We're on alert now. We know that if someone hears some intos, we stop. We're going to alert the other person.
What's happened Can we
We've
prove?
got signals. Just pretend it's your headphones fucking up.
Yeah.
Just for a wee bit. All right. Anyway, but before we get to how the wall came down, let's go over how and why it came about. So, why was the Berlin Wall built in the first place? Let's explore that. So, at the end of World War II in 1945, Germany, of course, was conquered and was split into 4 Allied occupation zones. So, you had the western side, which went to the US, Great Britain, and France. Why are you wetting yourself?
Just conquered. I don't know why that made me laugh.
Conquered.
It's
Conquer.
probably, yeah, I don't even know. That's just silly, but yeah, sorry.
Right.
It was conquered. Continue.
It was conquered. The western side went to the US, Great Britain, and France, while the eastern side of Germany went to the Soviets. So Berlin was actually entirely located in the Soviet section. However, as it was and is the capital of Germany, the agreements also saw that Berlin was split into similar sections. So while the city was in the eastern part of Germany under the Soviet rule, the city was also split into the same sort of occupation zones. So the Soviets controlled the eastern half of it and the Allies controlled the western half of Berlin. So as you could imagine, Berlin was completely in what was then called Eastern Germany, or under the German Democratic Republic. The Soviets had a real problem with the fact that they had Ally-controlled regions in Berlin, in their province, I guess, and in their territory, and they tried to get the Allies out for good with tactics like starving them out by cutting off food supplies, causing blockades to stop the supply of food and fuel to those regions. That was thwarted by the US and its allies, who supplied those people in those regions with food and fuel through air supplies, which was called the Berlin Airlift. And the Soviets then called the blockade off after a year. So that only lasted for a year, the blockade, from 1948 to 1949. And then shit goes back to relatively normal status for Berlin anyway. Peeps get on with their life. They're able to freely move between all the different fucking sections. So whether you're on East Berlin in the Soviet side or the West side, you could move freely around the city. It was fine. But then in 1958, so about 10 years afterwards, tensions rise again. And during that past decade, nearly okay, hang on. So shit goes back to relatively normal status. People are able to get on with their lives. They're able to freely move between both sides of East and West Berlin. But in 1958, tensions rise again, and that's due to the fact that in the past decade, nearly 3 million refugees had been leaving the Soviet-ruled East Germany and getting into West Germany through the East and West Berlin.
So the Soviet side was the shithole.
Yes.
And they all wanted to leave it to get to the other side.
Yeah. So they'll come under like a communist ruling into more of a democratic ruling, you know what I mean? So they're going from a communist side into so they're able to do that by going across the from East Berlin to West Berlin, getting into the West Germany embassy and shit like that.
That's such a dumb thing to do, split up a fucking country.
I know, and then a city inside another one half of that country.
That's like people just really fucking up their job, isn't it? Like in politics. Like, I think of the fuck ups that I have to deal with at work sometimes, but that is seriously fucking shit up. No one turned around and said, guys, come on.
This
is a really dumb
Well, it's the
idea.
Cold War, you know, so this is Soviets and the US and, you know, all that shit.
Let's compromise, let's split it. We can't decide who's going to own it.
It's like
whack it in the middle.
It's like that episode of the Brady Bunch. You know, Jan and Marsha split their room with a piece of tape down the middle. You're on my side.
He sounded like Cartman then from South Park.
It's a bad kitty. So East Germany start getting pissed at this because they're losing a lot of refugees who are skilled workers and young ones too. So doctors, teachers, all that shit are going into West Germany, and they're just pissed off about this.
They were allowed to move freely. They stopped it for a while, then they've let them move freely, so they weren't breaking any laws or sneaking out or anything. They were just going, fuck it, I hate it here.
And they didn't really stop the freedom of movement in the past, it was just they stopped feeding East
Food.
German, the West German regions, the West Berlin regions, sorry, food and all that shit to try and fucking smoke them out, basically.
Sure.
So summits, etc., shit like that, conferences are all held. They're not getting the resolution because that they wanted, the East Germans, because, well, the Eastern Germany rulers, because the West Germany rulers are going to start refusing the refugees entry. So they're like, it's on your own fucking bat. If they want to come live with us, it's fine.
Of course.
So they're still coming through, and they still keep coming through in the thousands. So on the 12th of August in 1961, they had a record 2,400 refugees cross the border into West Berlin, and the German Democratic Republic had enough. So the Soviet rule side, they'd had enough.
Sure.
On the 13th of August, 1961, the following day, they just start construction of the Berlin Wall and separate the regions. They didn't put any warnings out. It's not like you have here with the closing of the borders.
Fucking hell.
You've got till midnight on Sunday to get back in. Otherwise, you've got to quarantine.
Sometimes there has been immediate closures in some cases where the risk has been too great.
Lockdowns, that's true. So they don't have that. They just start putting up these walls. So before the wall was built, as I was saying, Berliners, that's what they called them. They could move freely across the border for work, entertainment, transportation ran through both regions with ease. So your trains, your buses, all that.
So you might have a grandma on one side looking after her grandkids, and then the parents are on the other side and can't get back over to get them. And
100%. So after the wall is built, as soon as that happened, it's impossible to cross from one side to the other without going through one of their checkpoints. So you might have heard of the famous Checkpoint Charlie.
Right. I don't believe that I have, to be fair.
Well, look, you haven't lived, I say. So you also have your Alpha and your Bravo checkpoints. And so they put the wall
Charlie.
Up. Checkpoint Charlie, please. The checkpoints are manned with soldiers who screened officials like diplomats, etc., before they were allowed to cross over. And travellers were very, very rarely allowed to cross. Families and, of course, friends were separated by the wall as soon as it went up, and they're unable to visit each other. People were cut off from their jobs. It was just instant. So if you had a job in West Berlin and you lived in East Berlin, you lost your job. If you had your grandmother over in West Berlin, your sister, your brother, connection stopped. You weren't.
How relevant is this to what's been happening?
It is quite relevant.
At the moment. It's insane.
The separation, exactly. The wall, as fucked up as it was considered by both sides a better option than a war. So during the time that the wall's up, people of course are trying to escape from the east side to the west side to get to their families, to get out of communist rule, and they're met with death. Excuse me.
So they killed the fuckers.
Yeah. So they used to be.
So west is good, east is bad.
East is shit. West is good. Well, look, in our opinions, yeah. But there's still, I think, conversations around today. There's still that divide sometimes.
But the east will kill you if you try to get to the west.
If you try to get on the west, I think
that's pretty bad.
Yes, you're right. That rules over. So yeah, people would do things like try to swim across the river, to get shot by the people in the guard towers. It's estimated that there are at least on record, there's at least 171 people were killed trying to cross over. But during the life of the wall, it was estimated that more than 5,000 East Germans, including border guards, managed to cross over by either jumping out of windows that were adjacent to the wall, climbing over the barbed wire fences.
Bribing, I bet.
Yeah, bribing. Sewer style, like the Shawshank Redemption, crawling through sewers to get out. Like, it's got to be pretty dire if you're willing to wade through fucking a kilometre of shit to get out. There was people who
communist rule, though, that can be pretty,
horrendous.
We've never lived in a communist
Thank God.
country, but I imagine it's not great.
Yeah.
It's not sunshine. Sunshine and roses.
I don't think you get access to Netflix and stuff like that. It was actually illegal.
It was the 60s, love. They would have been lucky to have colour TV.
And they also weren't. It was illegal to watch any Western Germany television shows and listen to the radio that was Westernized and whatnot. People drove through unfortified parts of the wall, like ram raiding it to get out. And also, and you might like this, some got over by flying via hot air balloon. Dorothy! There's no place like home.
That's creative.
I know. So it was a proper divide of lifestyle too. So the East was a communist-controlled state. They had to wait 10 to 12 years if they wanted to buy a car. They had to apply for it. They could only buy a kilogram of fruit in the winter months. People were prevented from gaining further education for political reasons. So like a lot of females.
Whoa.
Religion was disapproved of. And when you saw the wall up in its glory, the east side was just completely grey, while the west side was just covered in graffiti and anti-communist statements and stuff. So it showed a real juxtaposition. Is that the right thing?
Sure. Yeah.
What's that word?
I think it is juxtaposition.
Yeah. So you got
juxtaposition. I don't actually know. I'd have to look it up and see what
fucking grey. One side of it which is just completely fucking the communist rule compared to the other side which is not communist rule.
So who was running the shit? Who was running the show on the bad side and the good side? Do you know? Who was in
so
power?
the Soviet Union, Russia, was on the east side. And
so
then
that's the president? There's a president there? Who was president?
I don't know if it was Gorbachev or fucking who was the one before. When was Yeltsin? Was he after him or before him?
Fuck, you know more than me. I was going to say Stalin, but Stalin's Italy, isn't he?
I don't know. And I think Stalin's Russia.
Russia.
Maybe it was him.
My geography's not great.
I don't know. Look, I researched the wall, not the communists.
You weren't ready for my questions.
I didn't research the hammer and sickle.
I always do this to you, ask obscure shit, and I'm like, what about this? And you're like,
Well, that's good, though, because if I can answer it, it makes me feel cool. If I can't, I just go, shut up. Fuck. Mind your business.
Stupid bitch.
Stupid bitch. So yeah, the real lifestyle change. Yeah, so people's telephones were tapped and shit like that. I read this I read this report of this one lady who was talking about it, like, because it's, 30 years, and the 30-year anniversary 2 years ago, saying that she found, when it all went down, she found these documents of where the Soviets or the Democratic German Republic, I think it is, had done all this spying intel on her. And she was doing nothing. She was just a normal citizen who was just working and doing the normal shit. But she found documents and documents of intel on her through them tapping their fucking phone and shit like that.
Oh my God, that just reminds me of something. Have you watched any of The Crown at all?
No, I need to. We've heard so much about it.
It goes a bit slow. Like it is very good because it's I guess close to accurate. You could say it's quite accurate. But they do this thing where they, you know, the old phone lines where they plug in, you call the operator. Yeah, you call the operator and they connect you to the line that you want. So for the royal family, any of the royal properties, they were like senior, high up switchboard people. So if a call went between royal lines, they were like the special ones. But the operator actually listens the whole time. So because they need to disconnect. And so they're listening to the conversation that's occurring, yeah.
So they would have had to have so many people fucking employed just to do that.
Oh, they do. Like you see some of this, like in the, well, look, I don't, they had it in Australia too. They had that sort of phone.
Yeah, I know the picture you're talking about. It's like the headphone jack.
Yeah, and there's just desks and desks and desks. It's women mostly, but it's always men handling the.
It's all them stupid bitches could do back then, to be fair.
So it's men handling the royal people, and because I guess back then mute wasn't an option if you were plugging shit in.
Totally, yeah.
It was,
there's no call waiting.
Yeah, that was a sophisticated function. So they're literally plugging the phones in and still listening to the whole conversation. I was just like baffled. I was just like, oh my God. So they were like under secrecy. They would have been, if they would have been found out giving any secrets away, I'm sure they would have been like, their lives would have been ruined. But that just reminded me of that, like how crazy shit like that used to be.
Excuse me. So it's kind of like it's a modern day career, I guess, but maybe not as extreme with the fucking way that North Korea is, but it's that same
Sure.
divide of a country. One side's fucking communism, one side's very fucking K-pop.
Yeah.
And lifestyle between the two sides was completely different.
Yep.
So that's the wall. That's how the wall came about. That's what life was like for these people. So let's get down to the takedown, the fall of the wall.
Ooh.
So as the Cold War had began to chill out a little bit throughout Eastern Europe, Hungary opened their borders with Austria. Thousands of East Germans used that as an opportunity to flee to the west. Thousands more escaped by reaching the West Germany embassy in Czechoslovakia.
So there was no wall there between Hungary and the East, was there?
No. So Hungary.
They'd probably run out of money too because they spent so much money on that fucking wall and paying people to patrol it. And they're like, fuck, we can't build another wall.
I know. We'll make the Mexicans pay for it. Hey, Trump. So Czechoslovakia, who were an ally to East Germany, were now being inundated with people fleeing the East, and political pressure saw that something had to be done. So the Czechs were putting political pressure onto the East Germans, ruled the German Republic, whatever, Democratic Republic. Something had to be done, that had to be done fast. So to bring some rest to the citizens, a plan was put in place to ease travel restrictions between the East and the West. The wall was always to remain intact and operational. And
I told you, it's because they knew they didn't have the money to build two fucking walls between Hungary and between Czechoslovakia. Germany. So they were just like, well, fuck, we're going to have to let people do what they want because we can't build walls everywhere.
And at this stage, it's 28 years afterwards, so there's probably a bit more lax. The heat of the politics has probably gone down a little bit. So they decided they were going to ease some of the travel restrictions between the East and the West. The wall was always to remain intact and operational, and those wishing to cross the borders had to have a passport, which most of the East Germans didn't because they weren't allowed to travel. Mm-hmm. So now when you were stuck in East Germany too, you weren't allowed to fly to fucking Australia. You weren't allowed to go to England and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they held a press conference. They held a press conference on the 9th of November, 1989. No one really knew outside of the political party. No one really knew what the press conference was going to be about. The journalists who were invited along to it. So they turn up for what starts as an extremely fucking boring session. Journalists are falling asleep and shit. They're expecting some exciting announcement, but it would have just been full of all bureaucratic bullshit at the start.
Yeah, right.
Towards the end of the press conference, an Italian journalist asked what the proposed changes to the travel regulations and were going to be. And the public relations minister, Gunter Schabowski, who hadn't been involved in any of the discussions of the new regulations and wasn't fully updated on what the situation was going to be, vaguely answers and then remembers a piece of paper that he has in his hand that the General Secretary of the Socialist Party had given him right before the press conference. Say, this is basically what you got to talk about. So he reads the statement for the first time and delivered the news that East Germans would be able to leave the German Democratic Republic without any preconditions at all, and to the border crossings with West Germany. The conference really livens up at this point.
So was he authorised to say that, or did he just go?
He was meant to say that, but he was meant to also say that there's going to be restrictions in place. You have to have a passport to be able to do this. This will happen at midnight tomorrow night. This will, it'll be you go out, you come back in type of situation. So he was authorised to say it, but he just hadn't read it properly and wasn't fully briefed. And it was late at night and he was probably pissed. So the conference really livens up. Germans, and I had a drink. Love you for it. Hashtag Munich. Hashtag beer fest.
They love their schnapps. Yeah. Hashtag Munich. Hashtag beer fest. Hashtag Oktoberfest. Plus.
Hashtag Oktoberfest.
My favourite place in the world.
So all the journalists start going wild. So when's this happening? When is it happening? What's going on? This is big news. It's 28 years this wall's been up. People haven't been able to see families in that whole 28 years. This isn't just a fucking 6-month lockdown. And he had no idea. So just said, as far as I know, it's effective immediately. And he missed the part about the passports. He missed the part that the process was to begin the next day. And what may have been seen as a small oversight for him turned into a bit of a shit show. So the press conference is broadcast live in East Germany. East Germans head straight to Berlin to cross over the wall, to get through the wall, to get back into fucking what they thought was a better life. The guards weren't aware of this situation, so they weren't letting him through. It turns into absolute chaos. So as crowds are gathering and start demanding to get through, they end up start letting some of the people through. They were given orders to start letting the most aggressive people through, basically. Get them out of our side. So in the meantime, West Germany now have wind that the borders are wide open, as they were told, wide open, and they broadcast it. So that escalates things even more, and the citizens from the West start to crowd the wall on their side and welcome the East Germans through as they're coming through with champagne and flowers, chanting in German, of course.
Oh my God, that's
Open
beautiful.
the gate!
Open the gate!
That. Open the gate. I know,
They're not going to start shooting them or anything, are they?
Well, the West Berliners are like, come to our side, come graffiti outside of the wall.
No, I mean the East. They're not going to freak out because they didn't know what was happening. I know they were allowed to let the most aggressive, but they're not just going to start going. Brrr.
Look, I cannot confirm nor deny, but there probably were a few fucking shootings that maybe happened. A few caps were popped. But by the end of it, the guards are completely outnumbered by this fucking crowds, of people coming over there and swarming, and they have no way of holding back the crowd. And then people are just let through them with little or no identity checks. They're just like, just get out, go through. They're swarmed. Yeah. People are freaking out that it'll close in a day or two, so residents from both sides head to the walls, start getting on the piss and chanting, as I was saying, open the gate. They flood the checkpoints. That weekend alone, 2 million people from East Berlin get across over to West Berlin.
Shit.
And it was known as one of the greatest street parties in the history of the world.
Oh, God.
And Oktoberfest
was born. The Germans know how to party, don't they?
They sure do. People are reunited with their loved ones. People are reunited with families. Like, could have been love. Like, people who were going to get married, were just cut off.
Was it 28 years, did you say?
28 years, yeah. 28 years. So that same weekend, people are then coming up to the wall with hammers and picks because they hear that the wall's open. It was never meant to be open. It was just meant to be that they're going to allow people to go out and come back.
Yeah.
They start taking to the wall with hammers and picks and start breaking it down. Cranes and bulldozers come in and start taking it down section by section.
From the west or the east side?
From the west. And Berlin is then reunited for the first time in 28 years.
So they just went, fuck it, look. We've lost too many people. Let's just knock it down. Well,
the West Side were always for the end of the wall. Yeah. So they were like, fucking, let's take it down. There's no point in having it now if there's freedom.
Oh, West is good, East is bad. Sorry, I had literally wrote it down so I would remember, and I still got it wrong. So it was the West who were like, well, you've already opened the gates. Let's just get rid of it.
What's the point of the wall? If we don't need it, if there's freedom of travel, let's get rid of it. Yeah. So then when the wall's down, there's in a sense that the German Democratic Republic is also no longer needed. There's no longer needed to be a divide between East and West Germany.
Yeah.
And the country becomes one again. The following year, free elections are held. The East adopt the West German currency, and by the 3rd of October 1990, so less than a year after the wall had come down and been opened, East Germany no longer exists. West Germany no longer exists. It's Germany again. Checkpoint Charlie is still there. I had my photo at the front of Checkpoint Charlie. I also have a souvenir piece of the wall, which I was able to buy at a souvenir gift shop. Who knows if it's actually come from the wall? It may be a bit of fucking Besser brick with a bit of paint on it, but it said it was part of the wall, and I'm sticking with it.
So people our age would, they'd be looking at the current situation. So people born in the 80s or the 70s, they'd still be alive. Or people born in the 60s are still alive too. But they wouldn't have experienced that where it went for 28 years and then people can't cross the borders for a short amount of time and we're all like whinging and carrying on. They must be like, bitch, please.
Yeah. Hello. And
you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
And it just went up overnight and it just completely cut off and changed everyone's. It's like now if they did put a wall up between Queensland and New South Wales tomorrow. Yeah. Like, you'd be stuck there for 28 years.
Well, they did.
But you know what I mean? Like, but no, like, and you'd get shot if you tried to come across. Yeah, you would just get fined.
No one shoot no one, but still.
But the whole reason the wall came down was accidental. It wasn't meant to come down that night. It was not. It was always meant to still stay. Who knows how much longer East Germany would have gone on being ruled by the Soviets? It just was some fuck up by some guy who wasn't briefed properly, didn't read his brief properly, said it, and the power of the people tore it down. This is not an excuse to go to a freedom rally. I do not support freedom rallies.
I'm so glad you said that. Yes.
I think that's important.
Wow. So look, I really did think this was going to be a snooze fest. I'm pleasantly surprised. What a great story, and so relevant to what we're experiencing right now. Like, I love it. I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that your topic is sort of, I had no idea. You gave me a little bit of a brief. Quite like that guy who fucked up with the wall coming down. I may have given people the wrong idea about what your topic was going to be. I thought it was Old Town Sydney as in like convict times.
Have you been shit-talking me and shit-talking my topic?
No. I just, the same as yours with your thoughts on mine. I thought, oh yeah, this would be interesting. I thought it was on convict times. I didn't know it was about. Take it away, Skye.
A theme park, please.
A theme park, please. And was it called Old Sydney Town?
It was Old Sydney Town.
What did I say? Old School Town.
Old Sydney. No, you called it in the post Sydney Old Town or something.
Oh, what'd you tell me?
I did tell you, and you fixed it.
Oh, good. Okay.
My turn. So I'm going to talk about Old Sydney Town, and I'm going to read a little bit of a blurb from Wikipedia because it is actually, I know you were surprised by this, it is actually a theme park. To be fair, I was a little bit surprised when I looked it up and I was like, oh, they closed it as a theme park. Part of the reason that it closed down, though, was because it became irrelevant. Teenagers and children. So it closed down in 2003. It started in 1975, if you can believe.
It was around until 2003.
Yeah, but then it became irrelevant. Like, it filmed an episode, the whole second season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was filmed there.
Oh.
I know. 94, 95. When I reminisce about some of my memories there, they're from like mid 80s. Like, I'm talking, I dug up a photo. It's so funny because I messaged my sister and I was like, hey, have you got, because I knew that there was photos of us at Old Sydney Town. There was a specific one that I was looking for, but she's got a lot of the older like family albums. And I messaged her. I said, have you got any photos of us at Old Sydney Town? She's like, oh, let me have a look. Anyway, so she sends me this photo, and I shit you not, and I'm happy to share it on the Instagram page as well. I'm probably... Yeah,
send it to me. I'll use it in the promos.
I'm probably about 5 or 6. And I showed it to Mel the other night, and because all the kids were like, oh, you guys are older than that. And Mel, and like when you see Mel, like I look young, but Mel looks tiny, and Mel's 3 months older than me. So we were about probably 5, 6 at the very oldest. And this is one of my like memories that I'm going to share with you. But I'll give you a little bit of background about Old Sydney Town. So it ran from 1975 to 2003. So it's on the Central Coast, which is where I live now, obviously.
Okay. So it's not even in Sydney. Right.
No, it's on the Central Coast. So this is why we went there. So it was the kind of place that lots of schools went for excursions. Lots of families went. Gough Whitlam actually was there for the opening, so he officially opened it. I know we both love him so much, and I didn't even know that when I was researching. I was like, oh my god,
love it when you get those little tidbits through research.
I know. So I'm just gonna see if there's anything else.
Can I ask a question about it?
Yeah, sure.
So when you say it's a theme park but not a theme park, what was in it?
Well, this is what I'm going to get to. So but I'll just say a couple of other things. So they have tried to open it a few times. They've had investors there willing to put some money in, but it always dies for one reason or another, right? So basically what it is a theme park. It's weird that they would even call it a theme park. So it was set in the colonial times of the, let me just check because I don't want to be an idiot, 18th and 19th centuries, right?
Yeah.
So from the Captain Cook days onwards, so when there was convicts around. So basically what they did, and it was really funny because it was started by this researcher guy who worked at a university, and he ended up getting all these university students to come and build a lot of the exhibits for him as part of like their qualifications in uni. Like they were obviously doing historical subjects to a degree to be able to do it. So basically they made a replica of the 18th and 19th century. So it was, the streets were cobblestone like they were back in the day, mud, grossness, whatever. They had shops there so that, you'd walk into any shop and there'd be like a lady washing clothes, but she'd be washing it in a tub. You'd walk into a seamstress shop and she'd be
the old lolly shops and stuff.
Yeah, the old lolly shops. There was horse and carts, with the big, those white things that go on the back. What do you call those?
Yeah.
Those
canopy things, the wagons. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm picturing a lot like the rocks as well.
Yeah. So I have these really great memories. So I went there a couple of times when I was older in primary school for excursions. But the time that I remember vividly, and this is what I'm going to share because I just think it's insane. And also children today, I'm sorry to say this about the current youth, couldn't handle it. They would absolutely shit themselves and they would not be able to cope. So we went there, like I said, the photo that I found, Mel and I were about 5 or 6. At the absolute maximum, we were 6 years old. So we go to Old Sydney Town with our families. All our cousins were there. Back in the days when you used to do heaps of stuff with all your cousins and shit. And there was heaps of family members around.
No, because our cousins were all overseas.
Well, we used to go on these big family things, and I have so many cousins, so there was a whole bunch of us anyway. So I remember that we went to Old Sydney Town, and there was a big puddle out the front, and Mum telling me and Mel, because Mel and I are the same, similar ages, not to play near it,
I'm
right?
already picturing this, yeah.
So we were like, whatever, not listening, of course. And both of us fell into it, like proper. And it was like a big hole in the ground, mud puddle, black mud. And I was wearing a white Bugs Bunny tracksuit. I shit you not. And it has Bugs Bunny on the front, like a big giant Bugs Bunny there, and matching tracksuit pants. So Mum convinced me to take the pants off entirely because they were just horrible. And then pull my dress down and make it look like a dress. So I had like a sweater dress on, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Mel did the same. Mel did the same, but hers was a bit shorter than mine. And she also had a singy on underneath, the old cotton bond singlets that the kids used to wear. So she had one of those, so you can see. So the photo that I found is after we'd fallen in the puddle. So I've got my little Bugs Bunny sweater dress on, and Mel's
definitely using this in the promos.
And Mel's got her singlet pulled down, and her jumper that she was wearing was a bit too short, so she sort of like got a little skirt singlet happening.
It was the 80s.
And then my cousin Tracy, who was maybe 11 or 12 and much too old and mature to, go near a puddle, is looking, super fancy and cool and like this cute little dress and this pink little jacket. And she's like...
she's got a bottom half of her outfit.
Shit. So...
Strassy or cat shirt or something.
But on the same time that we went, so this is basically how it was. It was a reenactment place. You know how they reenact things like the Civil War and stuff like that?
I've seen a lot of them in the American sitcoms where they end up going to some old colonial town,
Well, this is our Aussie version of it, right? And I always see those shows and I think, fuck, I'd love to do that. It looks super awesome.
I had no idea we had one. No idea.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people didn't if you didn't live in Sydney or the Central Coast, like it wasn't but I did read one other thing, and I will mention this now, that it had during its time, and look, it did run from 1975 to 2003, it had 6 million park visitors. That's a lot of visitors. Yeah. So on the same time, Mel and I walking down the street, doing our own thing, very, very small children. But back then, our parents were probably in one store looking at something and we were a couple of shops down and no one was really concerned about us.
It was a safer time. Well, it was broadcast as a safer time.
Yeah, and I remember this man running up to me, looking at me, scaring the absolute bejesus out of me, dressed in like threads of clothes, stained, a convict look, right?
Please tell me that this is a park employee.
Yes. This is part of the reenactment stuff, right? This is the
Good.
stuff that children today would literally fucking die. They couldn't handle it. And jumps in front of me and says, "Don't tell them you've seen me. You know, I wasn't here. If they come and ask you anything, I wasn't here." And Mel and I
So
just...
it's a convict.
Yeah, so we completely shat ourselves, and we were like, "What the fuck?" We were like all of 6 years old. We were like,
Oh my
"What the
God,
fuck is
yeah.
happening?" So we just looked at each other, still in the shock of not really knowing what to happen. Our parents weren't there and really having no clue of what was going on. And then the next thing, the red coat guys, you know, like the proper soldiers that wore like top hat, the black top hat and the red button-down coat and the black breeches and the boots and stuff like that with the proper long bayonet rifle.
Like Beefeater type people.
Yeah. But the Australian version, the like Australian settlement times.
Land eaters.
So they all come marching, and there's about like 5 or 6 of them, and they come marching up behind us after this man's just scarpered. Like, we can't see him. He's hidden, and we can't see him. And there's like shops on either side, people everywhere strolling through the shops and whatever. There's like these carriages with horses going along, and Mel and I are still in complete shock. And so soldiers run up, and they're like, "You've seen him, haven't you?" And we just went,
That is mortifying.
I know,
Like,
right?
it's slightly irresponsible that they've gone up to kids without parents and done this.
This was 1986.
No.
Come on.
Let's terrorize those bitches.
It's Gremlins time, when Gremlins was a kids movie. So we were just completely horrified. Like, we didn't cry. I don't remember crying. I remember us both just still being like, "What the fuck?"
Probably in shock.
Where are our parents, by the way? Because this fucker's like getting up in our face. This is not cool. My dad will kick your ass. Anyway.
Do you know who he is?
No one touches his girls.
What's his name again? What's the nickname?
My dad. Oh, Specho.
Specho, get your ass.
Anyway, so they're like, and they've got proper guns, well, replica guns, obviously, but they've got proper guns, and we're like, what the fuck? So we don't know anything about settlement times. We're little tiny kids. We haven't even gone to school yet. So they're marching, and then they just leave us, and they start hassling other people and whatever, and we're just like, what is happening? And the next thing we just see all the crowds in the street, and there was like a hill, like a green grassed hill with a big tree at the top is what I remember. And I remember just seeing all these crowds of people just moving towards this hill. And at that point, my parents came from somewhere, or at least the older cousins. I can't remember exactly who came, but they like said, "Come on, there's a show on, you know, come with us. We've got to go watch this." Anyway, so we go up to this top of the hill, and I shit you not, they had caught the convict in between. I hadn't really seen them catch the convict, but they'd caught the convict and they dragged him up, and then they put him onto like wood. He was, I'm pretty sure he was standing, or he might have been kneeling, but they'd chained him up with handcuffs and whatever to like
ready for the cat of nines.
Yeah, and then they whipped him, for about an hour. And look,
Hour?
I was about 6, so look, the special effects, if you were an adult, you probably would have been like, fuck off, this is not realistic at all. But I remember there being chunks. Like, his back was covered, there was blood flying everywhere, there was like chunks of what looked like flesh, and they kept showing the cat of nine tails up, and it had like, you could see that it was sharp and whatever, and all obviously incredibly fake. But to a 6-year-old child, I was
incredibly real.
Traumatized. I remember shaking, but not being able to look away, and just shaking like on the sidelines, just watching all of this go down, and just seeing like, what is even happening? Why are they hurting this man?
It sounds pretty horrific.
And I remember my mum laughing a lot about it and saying, "Oh, it's just a shame.
Him again.
It's just
Get him again. I want to see blood."
No, she was just like, this is what my mum used to make me watch horror movies when I was about 7 or 8. Like, I'm talking, Freddy Krueger stuff, Halloween, and she always said, and Chucky, I'm still traumatized.
I know,
Chucky.
you're still traumatized by Chucky.
But she used to say to me, "Oh, there's cameramen behind there. It's not real. You're such a sook, Skye."
I'm 7, Mum.
I'm not exaggerating, like when I was really young. So she was laughing and just going, "It's okay. It's just actors. It's not real. You'll be all right." And again, I don't remember sobbing or anything, but I remember just being like in shock the entire time, just going, what has just happened to me? And Mel equally looking at me with horror in her eyes going, is this real?
What the fuck is going on? Oh,
So,
God, I can't wait to see this photo.
I know you will love the photo. It is hilarious. But I thought that even though it's not a specifically like a historical event, I thought it was actually saw an article pop up about what they're doing with the land. Like, people are always trying to buy it. It's a very, expensive piece of land that they could do all sorts with, and in a really lovely part of the Central Coast. So there's always lots of interest and stuff like that. But the last time I think there was some Chinese people interested, and they were going to recreate the old Sydney town, but that fell over, and that was only a couple of years ago, so it didn't happen. But
and you know that the Chinese were very an important part of our historical time in the colonial times during the gold rush and everything.
Yes, in the gold rush times, I am aware. Yes, I do remember the gold rush, the history lessons. I've also read a lot of Bryce Courtenay's novels, The Potato Factory, and then the subsequent books after that. Have you not read any of those books?
The Smith's Factory.
No, it's the Potato Factory, and then there was a couple
Smith's
after.
Chips,
Solomon's Song is one of them. I've still got Solomon's Song on my bookshelf, actually. I don't know what happened to the Potato Factory.
No, I read more of the Wilbur Smith ones about.
I read the Wilbur Smith about
Egyptians.
Egypt. Yes, that's where I became obsessed with Egypt for a little while and was determined to travel there one day, but I still haven't travelled there. But
me neither. And I am very, very. I was always very excited about getting there as a child as well. Now I'm just a bit sort of scared.
Yeah. Although a lady that I work with, she has been to Egypt and tells me just how amazing it was. And she was there maybe a year or two before COVID hit. So she talks a lot about how she'd love to go back. And
it'd be nice to do like the river cruise and all that stuff. Anyway, back to your old Sydney town.
Yeah, and look, as I said, it was a place where kids used to go for school excursions, and there was a bunch of other times that I remember going there, but I don't vividly remember my experiences the way I remember that experience. But when you're
the one
a kid,
that's actually fucking imprinted onto your brain,
I know, right?
And caused many, many therapy sessions.
I know.
Since. I understand.
But like, as a child, as a very small child, you know how kids make, when you go back and look at something that you haven't seen since you were little, and you're like, oh, fuck, it's that small.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I remember the movie Alligator, I think it was called. It was a horror movie when I was a child, and it used to terrify me. It was a giant alligator that someone flushed a pet one down the toilet, turned to this huge monster, came up through the sewers, broke into a wedding, eats the bride and all that shit.
The same way that Piranha movie starts as well. Someone flushes the piranha down the toilet, and then it comes back and ends up at the pools and kills everyone because it's like flesh-eating piranha.
That's what this is like with the alligator. And I remember it terrifying me. And I remember watching it then probably 10 years afterwards and going, the actual fuck.
Look, I am a pussy when it comes to like horror movies or anything like that, so I would still find it scary. It's like Snakes on a Plane. You've seen Snakes on a Plane, right?
No, but I have heard of it. I just could never bring myself to watch a movie called Snakes on the Plane, which I guess is about snakes on the plane, but...
My nan and I watched it when we were in Thailand, and we were sharing a room, and there was absolutely nothing else on except for Snakes on a Plane. And Link was there with us. It was me, my nan, and
I
Link.
remember when you went to Thailand.
On a little trundle bed. Yeah.
And you're subjected to... It was like back in the days before when you had 4 free dad channels. You had to deal with what you got. It was like when Vinny and I lived in New Zealand. There were 6 channels.
Yeah.
Vinny would never, ever watch an episode of Celebrity Apprentice or The Biggest Loser or anything like that now. But back when we lived in New Zealand, and that's all we had each week. You had nothing else.
And that was before streaming.
He loved it.
Too. You couldn't stream shit.
No.
But yeah, look, unless you have any other questions, that's pretty much... Look, I would love to be able to go back in time and see how it looks as an adult.
We must be able to get some pictures of it.
Things. I've had a bit of a look. Look, I shared you the trailer, so we'll post the trailer and then we'll post a couple of the video. Yeah. I mean, the photo. Oh, the other thing I forgot to say. So when my sister found it, she messaged me and she goes, "Is this the photo that you're talking about?" And I was like, "Yes, actually, I thought there was another one, but that is one of the main photos I was thinking of." And then she goes, "Look, I've got an entry ticket." as well that was with the photo to Old Sydney Town. And it's just like a card, like a business card, like a MIT one. And she goes, and it looks like there's an autograph on the back. And she showed me the back of it, or sent me a photo of the back of it. And it's got biro writing on it, to Sarah or something, Sarah. And then the rest of it you can't really read. So obviously she got an autograph from somewhere.
The convict who had his back ripped to shit.
I don't know if it was him.
It was written in blood. She would have
been about 4. So she would have been a proper baby, 3 or 4.
Sign this.
Unless she wasn't there, I can't. No, she was, because we were wearing matching Bugs Bunny tracksuits. Yeah. I think hers was like a baby blue or maybe a pale pink, and I had the white color, because she used to have an absolute fucking coronary. If something was pink and any other color, she had to have the pink. And where's Stefan?
And you'd be like, it's fine. It's fine.
No, I wouldn't. I'd be like, I'm the fucking oldest. Give me the pink shit, bitch. But she was the baby, so she would get it, because Mum would say, she's the baby. Just give it to her.
You're probably screaming out to the guy that was whipping the fucking convict. Whip this bitch. I want my pink fucking bunny outfit back. But no, I do remember when you sent through that video. We were out and about. We were out having dinner, and I started watching it, and I thought, I watched
what the fuck is this?
I watched the first 5-10 seconds of it, and I thought, like I said to you, it looks like a beer commercial. That's what I thought it was. I thought really, Carlton Dry was going to come across on VB.
Old beer commercial.
And I didn't know that it leads into... I've got to watch it in full now, because I didn't know it lead into a theme park thing. And I thought, oh, okay, Old Sydney Town is about something with the convict settlements and blah, 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 historical in that sense. Mm. But no, I love that. I didn't know anything about that.
We probably should have posted it before so people could get a sense of what it looks like. But I imagine...
We can do that in our teaser, in the lead-up.
Yeah. I imagine that lots of people will listen to this who live on the Central Coast. So listeners who, live in my local area will be like, fuck yeah, Old Sydney Town, mate, because every single kid who grew up here would have went to it probably once a year, all the way through primary school.
Wow. Yeah, I could imagine it was definitely a fucking excursion place.
Yeah. So whilst they called it a theme park, and that's what I said at the beginning, it eventually closed its doors because of its lack of relevancy to young people.
Interest.
Yeah,
it was probably still relevant, but just no one gave a shit anymore.
Not to young people, as they were like, what the fuck is this shit? Fuck off. I don't want to see some old lady washing clothes in his metal tub.
Luna Park.
Exactly.
Very good.
But yes.
It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Stupid Bitches Say What. We hope you enjoyed our ramblings in this week's episode.
Now, don't forget, if you like what you hear, tell your mates and follow our socials and our YouTube channel, Stupid B Say What. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so please email us at stupidbsaywhat@gmail.com for any feedback, topic suggestions, or just general chit-chat. You stupid bitches.
You stupid bitches.
Yeah, that stupid bitch. He's a stupid bitch. What a stupid bitch. That stupid bitch.